Welcome, everyone. We are going to start in just a minute. Hi, and welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to this month's Poem Jam. I'm John Smalley, and I am the librarian with the San Francisco Public Library. While we're waiting for a few more people to join us, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our community and to tell you about a few of our upcoming programs. One moment. On behalf of the Public Library, we want to welcome you to the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. And as the original stewards of this land, and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place. As guests, we who reside in their traditional territory recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. On Friday, April 18th, On the Same Page Book Club discusses Post-Colonial Love Poem, the acclaimed new book by 2021 Pulitzer Prize in Poetry winner, Natalie Diaz. In a second program on April 26th, Natalie Diaz will appear in conversation with author and educator Michelle Cruz Gonzalez. On Sunday, April 24th, in the main library's Corrett Auditorium, the library celebrates Bay Area Black poet laureates with readings by Tongo Isa Martin, Devora Major, and Dr. Ayodele Nzinga. Last but not least, on Wednesday, April 27th, the best-selling author Emily St. John Mandel discusses her latest book, Sea of Tranquility, with journalist and author Annalee Newitz. So that ends my announcements. I'd like now to turn the microphone over to Poem Jam's host, the poet Kim Shuck, who will introduce today's program and readers. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, and welcome people in attendance. I'm seeing that, okay, that's good. We have an incredible lineup tonight. Just some amazing readers, and I can't wait to get into it, but I just wanted to explain a little what tonight was going to be about. We've been seeing an increase in banned books, and we've also been more aware, and I don't know if it's because of the internet and the availability of more information, but we seem to be more aware of poets who are political prisoners as well. So tonight we're going to be talking about and through work that has been subjected to extreme censorship. We have one person on the panel that has had work banned. We're going to be hearing the work of people who have been imprisoned, one of whom died in prison in January, I think it was. And we might end up talking a little bit about this. Tongo Isa Martin will be here later as well. So just to move on with the thing, our first reader is D.L. Lang, who is the Poet Laureate Emerita from Vallejo, California, and was really why I started putting this particular reading together, because I heard that your book was banned.
Yeah.
So, welcome, TL, to the microphone here at Poem Jam.
Thank you so much for having me. So a little background on my work getting banned here. Authority figures have been trying to silence me for years, but poetry remains the place where my inner voice is completely free. It's so important that right is preserved and defended around the world. I've been influenced by 1960s and 1930s historical figures. I read banned books. I listen to blacklisted protest singers. It's very important that we don't let these voices that fight for justice slide into oblivion. Those voices reached me in the middle of an environment that violently tried to instill the opposite viewpoint and showed me that I was not alone. And eventually I began to take action on my values. Without access to ideas, none of us know where we stand in life. That's the importance of art, and that is what fuels me as a poet. I was writing anti-war poetry as a teenager, much to the chagrin of my teachers in the small conservative military town in Oklahoma. At 19, I expressed a moderate anti-war opinion to the press saying that war isn't always the answer during the Iraq War, and they buried a typo-written article in the back of the paper due to their own bias rather than print the quote. I recently had a 9-year-old ebook of mine banned from Scribd, a company which then had the audacity to post a video of themselves giving away historically banned books when they ban entire genres on their platform. Abundant Sparks was super tame compared to my recent stuff. For some reason, my interview didn't air on KPFA this week, so I'm joking around that I'm even too radical for them, though it's probably some technical thing. But it's a badge of honor. I must be doing something right. I take it as a challenge. It's making me write harder stuff now, because if you couldn't handle a pacifist, well, the socialist has a few things to say. So I'll read some poems from Abundant Sparks, and then I'll read some newer stuff about being working class, because that seems to be some kind of taboo in this country that folks want to ban. So the first poem is called Plowshares. I awoke this beautiful morning to witness an amazing sight. The nations have laid down their arms, their peoples will no longer fight. The evil dictator tyrants all died of heart attacks, mysteriously, overnight. The swords have been beaten to plowshares, the guns museum pieces now. The nukes have been dismantled, the tanks have rusted down. Estranged lovers and parents with children long since left now embrace their differences and hold tight to each other's breast. On this day, no innocents died. The children are all healthy. On this day, no mothers cried. With peace, we are all wealthy. The doctors now have magic pills, cancer and AIDS, no more. Starvation and homelessness, a thing of the past. We each have more than we need. Religions now work together in peace, each praising God in their own way. Differences are accepted and celebrated, and not a single mouth preaches hate. Next one is called Generation Awake. Open your glazed eyes. March towards peace, work towards love, feed your brothers, shelter your sisters. No more bullets raining down, no more madmen shrieking in infamy, no more pain and confusion, no more lives dying early in vain. Step away from the screen. Do you even remember the green? The chlorophyll and youthful nostrils now replaced by formalin-soaked suits? Feet, once barefoot chasing nature, chase after a different green. Tell me, are you happier? The snarkadelic wordsmith awaits the penguin whisperer. Standing in the dark haze of the alleyway, every breath sends a chilly fog into the night. The stars long since blotted out of the sky by manufactured neon bulbs flickering in their inconsistent rhythms like an erratic heartbeat. Spooked by unknown sounds and thoughts, unchained in incessant regurgitation, lying awake at midnight between consciousness and dreaming. The mind rambles on like the city streets, never failing their constant symphony of horns. The cries of those wandering souls long since forgotten by the society that claims to care, the politicians, photo ops, guilt-driven good deeds, the jaded jerks with their assumptions of panhandling no-goodniks, passing by in their $2,400 suits and brightly shined shoes, never giving a second thought to the down and out. Sleep is a luxury in these days of 24-hour shifts. Electric suns destroying rhythms here since before time. Machines built without off buttons are clicking around the clock. Coffee cups overflowing, endless refills of a caffeinated generation, walking past art and beauty in a haste, a waste. Laser focused on problems man-made and trivial, while eyes grow beet red, dead tired, in a race to see what machinery will wear down its rusted elements. In a final cry of acquiescence, its bones and bolts no longer fit to serve. Taxis screaming down the street in a hurried impatience, as I glance toward the calm dance of a paper bag flying in the wind. The ever-present ticking of the silver-encrusted pocket watch hanging from the stranger's trench coat shakes me from my dream. Here he has delivered in simple whisper the keys that unlock that next lexicon, destined to pass from my weary fingers onto simple paper. As if on a movable cue by some divine puppetry, my reluctant muse, the penguin, disappears into the night, leaving this wordsmith waiting once again. And that was all written in my 20s, and that's what Scribe decided was not readable. So I'm going to read some newer stuff. I've been playing with my radical side, trying to perform an exorcism on my working class rage and turn it into poetry because that is a healthy outlet for that. This is called The Fall, and it's a bit autobiographical. They rob your paycheck every week so they can go bomb the meek, while promising that you'll be okay if something happens to go astray. While you're flushing all your earnings away, just trying to survive day by day by day by day, they're hoping you won't realize it's a lie one day. What little that you manage to save, they're going to take that from you too. Raising prices up high until you feel blue. Crashing the market with all you invested too. You're already overworked and underpaid, but you won't wake up until it's too late. First you get sick, then you lose your job, then you lose your home, and you don't know which way is up. You stand in line for food, you stand in line for any handout, you stand around waiting for change, you stand around begging for change, you stand around and you are changed, you stop standing and start making change. You can never cease to see yourself in the man lying down around the corner. His clothes are torn and tattered, he's given up bruised and battered, the system is left him completely shattered, so you start giving him your last dollar. You see gaping holes in the safety net, and no matter how much people try, no matter how much they truly care, their small acts cannot save you because something larger is afoot. They'd save you if they could, but they're on the same sinking ship, trying every day just to make it while the floorboards flood and crack, revealing a rotting national foundation. The invisible hand of the market weighs upon you, holding you down, pushing you to the ground. It'll take multitudes to lift you back to your feet. It'll take multitudes out in the streets. There ain't nowhere to go but up. But you gotta learn how to stand up. You gotta learn how to see reality. You gotta learn how to fight to be free. That's how you end up just like me. No war but class war. I am tired of the boot standing on my neck. It doesn't seem to matter what I do. I will never matter to you. I followed all your rules. I followed them to a T. I bent over backwards to please you, having hope in the American dream. But no matter what I did for you, you never had a full-time job for me. You wouldn't let me speak up when things were going wrong. You told me you didn't believe me. You hit me for putting a paperclip on the wrong side of the page. Brandishing scissors, you mocked me in a German accent. You fired me for getting sick. Your working conditions injured me permanently. You insulted me for making simple mistakes. You wouldn't treat me with basic human dignity. Bosses steal and cheat and lie constantly, but the working class is expected to be perfect, morally. You refuse to show respect to the bottom of the barrel, and you wonder why we're angry at you. You make us grovel for health care. You won't give us a loan to start our own businesses. You hoard all the wealth. You make us fight to stay alive. If you wanted me to be a capitalist, maybe you should have treated me nice. You exploit all of us, work us to the bone, then discard us like garbage. I wish you'd just leave us alone. I'm tired of making everyone else rich. I'm tired of fighting to survive. I'm tired of trying to fit into this sick society of lies. You steal from every one of us. It's about time we take it back. You treat my whole generation like we're a bunch of slaves. You mock us for being unable to save. You mock us for being unable to have children. You mock us for being unable to buy houses. You mock us for not being able to afford your luxuries. You mock the joys we find in simplicity. You send my cousins off to die in war. You turn us against the generations that came before. You turn us against people who look different than us. You turn us against people who believe different than us. You turn us against folks in other countries. You turn us against each other. I refuse to fight my brother. This last one is called Time. Your multiple mansions and big fancy cars ought to land you behind bars because while you're lying idle, the working people still starve. While you sit around drinking up wine, the masses are still struggling all of the time. When the pitchforks and torches come straight to your door, maybe then you'll remember what your heart was made for. You refuse to pay us a living wage. One day you're going to meet our rage. That wealthy horde can't protect you from the hordes. If you want to stop it, you better change now, for there ain't time for your pyramid scheme. We've asked you nicely for centuries, but it takes revolution to cleanse the greed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DL. I really appreciate you being here.
You're welcome.
One of the things, one of the reasons that we're doing this theme tonight is that almost everywhere I go, somebody asks me during the question and answer period, do I think poetry matters? And I do think poetry matters. But it doesn't matter if it matters to me. I know it matters to places elsewhere because they imprison poets pretty much right away. If they're not censoring the work, then they're, censoring poets directly by throwing them in a box. Our next two readers are going to be sharing work from imprisoned poets from two different places. Our next reader is Kenneth Long, who's an incredible poet in his own right, but tonight is going to be reading the work of Burmese political prisoner poets in translation for us, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for hosting me. It seems timely and appropriate that I should be giving voice through English translation to many of the poets who are unable to speak for themselves because they are either in prison or, well, some of them sadly have been killed because they participate in protests. And in a military regime like Burma, the standard way of dealing with protests is to shoot into the crowd with live rounds. So some poets were killed, some poets are in prison. And I hope that through my translation, I'm able to give some of them voices. Many of these poems are part of a new anthology that was put together by volunteer editors and is called Picking Up New Shoots Will Not Stop the Spring. Picking up new shoots will not stop the spring. It's a line that is inspired by a poem by Pablo Neruda. It's about because Burma's resistance movement against the military regime is known as the Burma Spring. So this book pays tribute to that by saying, you may actually pull out all the shoots, but you're not going to be able to stop spring from coming when the time comes. The first poem I'm going to read is called Fearless Tiger. Fearless Tiger is written by a former journalist and a former political prisoner called Hantawadi U Wintin. U Wintin has passed away, so he's beyond the reach of torture or oppression now, but he left behind his words, powerful, inspiring words. Among the stories that people told about this man was that when he was released from prison, he insisted on wearing his blue prison shirt. He wouldn't return it. He said that he's going to keep wearing his blue prison shirt for the rest of his life because as long as his fellow poets and his fellow politicians and fellow dissidents are still in prison, even though he may be physically free, he's not still free. So he felt he needed to wear that blue prison shirt to be in solidarity with these others who are still in prison. So this is Fearless Tiger. And this was written by him when he was in prison. And people like him were deliberately banned from owning papers and books in prison. So according to his own biography, he said that he actually had to memorize this poem. And then if he could scratch out the words of the poem with any kind of sharp little pieces of rock that he could find on the floor. And then eventually when he got out of the prison, he would recite it the way he remembered it. And then the poem becomes in published form. Fearless Tiger by Hantawadi U Wintin. Burning sun, pelting snow, sometimes the heat is prickly, sometimes the cold shakes me. My narrow living quarter sees no bright light, feels no wind blow, sees no sunshine nor no moon rise, sees no human nor humanity, sit or gaze, sleep or think, can't get news, can't even sing a song, can't read, can't attempt poetry, can't preach, can't even speak to a soul. Samsara is empty. My world is tiny. I pace in my little space. I pause before the iron door. I stand for a bit and the day is gone. Gone was the day before. Gone is the whole day. Gone will be the next day. Gone, 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 get them all gone. a day or a life, a month or an age, a year or an era. I won't lose hope. I won't give up. Now I'm the anvil, later I'll be the hammer. Don't you know the truth is on my side? The people are on my side. Time stands with me and Buddha stands with me. Do you think that I'll grow blunt in monotony like a caged tiger at the zoo? What a laugh. Remember, as long as the black stripes cut across my yellow bright, unmistakable and clear, a tiger is a tiger, and I am just the same. And that's by Hantawari U Win Tin. The next poem is called To Wilt is to Bloom, and is by a poet named Maung Chonwe. Maung Chonwe is also no longer with us. He has passed away a long time ago. Under a military regime, there was a very oppressive censor board. The censor board that will cut out anything that they deem criticizing the government or undermining the authority of the military regime. So Burmese poets have to learn to talk about what they want to talk about using symbolism, using code words, and using language that readers would understand, but the military regime and the authorities would be too dumb to understand. In other words, readers can read between the lines and understand what they are talking about. This poem on the surface is talking about flowers, but what he was really talking about was how the army will shoot at protesters with live rounds and how the protesters' bodies would be strewn on the floor, left behind after such an event. So this is called To Wilt is to Bloom by Maung Chonwe. For flowers, to wilt is to bloom. If you pluck one, one more rises. If you drop two, two more spring up. So come, knock us down, wild gust, tumble us, cut us down, storming blades. Blow your hardest, do your worst. Litter the ground with our butts, trample on us, see if we care. To wilt is to bloom. That's the flower's doctrine. You may crush us, we may fall, but when we die, we rise again. That's To Wilt is to Bloom by Maung Chonwe. Another poem that I'm going to read is called Which Song, Dear Girl? Which Song, Dear Girl? And this was written by former student leader Minko Naing. Minko Naing was also a former political prisoner, and this poem was one that he wrote when he was in prison. He wrote it as if he was talking to his daughter who is outside, waiting for his release. So this is his poem called Which Song, Dear Girl? Which song should I teach you, my dear girl? The sound of whips all day long, all for the sake of a pyramid. Let not this kind of music be around in your time. Don't want you to sing along, not even by accident. For you and this era to sing together, I blindly write in my dream a chorus that makes all the pianos mute. Can you hear the music of the rise and fall of rosary beats, of sunlight striking the pagoda gongs, of jasmine buds washing their hands, of snails pouting and stomping their feet? Just keep listening, my dear girl. A flock of skylarks over my head looks like they're heading home, turning in for the night. Such a precious sight. Daddy is still looking at them. That's called Which Song, Dear Girl? By Minko Naing, a former political prisoner. The last poem I'll read is called Each with Its Own Grace, and that's by Tim Mo. Tim Mo was also a former political prisoner and a poet. After he was released from prison, he immigrated to the US. He came and he lived with his daughter in LA for a while. but you could tell that the poems that he wrote in exile shows how much he longed to be back home and couldn't be back home. Um, um, he also had a chance to come to San Francisco and give a literary talk with the Burmese community. And I distinctly remember the story that he talked about this bizarre encounter at the interrogation center. When he went in there for the very first time, he was arrested. He was arrested because he wrote a lot of, he talked in favor of the civilian government and the democratic forces against this military rule. So in the prison, when he was in interrogation center, the person who was in charge of interrogating him introduced himself and said, Mr. Timo, to tell you the truth, I'm actually a fan of your poetry, but I have a duty to perform, so I'm sorry if you'll forgive me. I'm going to do my job, and then started beating him. And that is the bizarre encounter that Timo talked about. This is called Each with Its Own Grace, and I hope that I can end it on this note. The moon shines in its own light, its own glow. The little torch too, with its own reach, its own fang. The little jasmine with its own fame, its own bud. The yellow burdock flowers in its own season, with its own scent. The deep, wide river has its own patterns, its own waves. The curly creek flows with its own stream, its own ferry. This, that, and everything, each a beauty in its own right. Nature blesseth everyone with charm and power as its gift. Be not jealous, hold not grudge. Envy maketh ugliness. With its own cloud in its own pace, in the right time, at the right place, each find its role, its own purpose, proves capable in its own measure. So that's my last poem. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Kenneth. That was quite a collection. And those are all from Picking Off New Shoots Will Not Stop the Spring. Is that correct?
With the exception of the last one, all the ones that I read are part of the anthology. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That seems like a must-get book. Our next reader, Manaz Bedihian, has taught me a lot of things over the years, not least of which was this, no, really, not the least of which was this this January when, with the loss of an Iranian political prisoner poet, pulled back the veil on some serious poetry that I hadn't read before. And Manaz is a poet in her own right, a translator, and she's going to be sharing some of that work with us today. Please welcome Manaz Bedihian.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. I am here to talk about Bakhtash, but if I had time, I will also talk about Nadia Anjuman. I don't know if anybody knows Nadia Anjuman. Nadia was a poet from Afghanistan, 25 years old. Her husband killed her. And I was the first one to actually translate one poem from her into English, and it was published all over. But right now her book is translated in many languages, really. But Bakhtash died in January 8th in Evin prison in Iran, notorious prison, very bad place. He was only 47 years old, extremely talented poet. And he was writing poetry from a very young age. But he was really amazingly, he even amazes me, he was too brave. He said, I'm willing to die for freedom of speech. And when they captured him, he wasn't the only one. He was a member of PEN Iran. They captured him with two other poets at the same time. which they are still in prison. But Baktash was the one that really valued, I can say that because the other two also valued freedom of speech, but he was too brave. Let's put it this way. Baktash was born in 1974 in Shahr Rey, Tehran. He has published 3 collections of poetry. In addition to his work as a poet, he has been involved also in production of numerous feature films and short films as an assistant director. His first independent film, The Solar Eclipse, was released in 2005. Since 2013, he has been indicted numerous times for his peaceful activism and poetry and writing and films. Among other things, Aptin has spoken out against censorship and advocated for freedom of expression and abolition of death penalty. So he was really, really active. Because of this, Aptin was sentenced to 5 years in prison in May of 2019. And what was the crime? What did they say his crime was? They said propaganda against the state and conspiracy against national security. A poet, an artist, without a gun, without a bomb in his hand. He was very dangerous because pen is mightier than sword, and the dictators cannot tolerate anybody talking against them. He has been serving his sentence when he died January 8 this year in prison. Okay, you might ask, how did he die? He got COVID. And if you go online, I didn't look for the picture, photo of him. He's chained in hospital bed while he's reading his book. A poet is chained in hospital holding his book. He got COVID and they didn't pay attention. They said, who cares? There's a prisoner got COVID. And so the COVID killed him. I am gonna, in 2021, PEN America gave Freedom of Speech Prize to Baktash Aptin, the poet we are talking about it right now, and the 2 other poets with him. So they awarded a prize for freedom of speech. But in this year, when he died, again, PEN America wrote this. Our worst fears materialize today as we mourn the utterly preventable death of Baktash Aptin, said PEN America's chief executive officer, Susan Nasser. COVID is a natural killer, but Aptin's death was aided and abetted by the Iranian government every step of the way. And really, it broke our heart in Iran, especially his friends. And so right away, I translated some of his poems, and we had a reading that Kim also was one of the main readers, and Deborah, and I translated lots of poems and gave it to each one of poets in San Francisco. They read it in English. So I am gonna actually read 2 of his poems, short poem. I will read it bilingually. I will read it in Farsi, and then I will read my translation. The first one is called A Hat for Freedom. کلاهی بر سر آزادی، کلاه را از سر آزادی بر می دارم. نگاه کن کیست که این گونه جان خود را به بازی گرفته باشد. به آسمان و دریا نگاه می کنم. غم انگیز و جذاب است دنیا. با این همه آیا اعتصاب شهاب سنگ ها و نهنگ ها شجاعانه نیست؟ A hat for freedom. I'm going to take the hat off the freedom. Look, Who has taken his own life so lightly like this? I look at the sky and the sea. The world is tragic and fascinating. However, with all this question, the strike of meteors, stones, and veils isn't bravery. The second poem called Homeland. وطن، درختان با چشمانی سبز، کبوتران با کفنهایی سفید و تو با گونه های سرخ. وطنم، تابوت خورشید این گونه از شانه های آسمان بالا می افتد. Homeland. Trees with green eyes, pigeons with wide shrouds, and you with red cheeks, my homeland. The coffin of the sun. This is how it climbs from the shoulders of the sky, falls high. So this two poem was by Baktash. His poems are really, really amazing, especially in original language. It's so rhythmic, musical, it's beautiful. But I'm going to read a poem from Nadia Anjuman. As I said, she was 25 years old lady. I think she was also teaching in one of the colleges in Kabul. Her husband killed her. It is not surprise because they killed so many women in Afghanistan. And right now with Taliban in power, they killed so many poets, artists, women, just name it. But I will read this poem that I translated. It's called, I Don't Want to Open My Mouth. I don't want to open my mouth. What should I sing of? To me, who life hates. I don't care much about singing. Should I speak of sweetness when it's so much bitterness that I feel? Oh, the fist of oppressor. Oh, the fist of oppressor. It has covered my mouth with no one by my side in life. To whom will I dedicate my tenderness? It gives me so much to say, to laugh, die, exist. Me and my forced loneliness, with my pain and my sadness, I was born for nothing, for nothing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I think I want to get our poets in a conversation for a little while. And I know Tonko said he was running late. And so we should talk about this a little bit. In the United States, until 1978, Native religions were illegal. When we talk about poetry, I always think of, I think I heard Kenneth say this, called it a song. And I don't know if you thought you misspoke, but I think you're right. I think they're songs. I think poems are songs. I think poems are prayers. They're probably secular prayers in many cases. The voice of spirit is a powerful thing, and it's one of the first things that people try to take away. So I am actually old enough to remember when our religions were illegal. I was, as far as we're concerned, I was an adult at that point when it changed over, and the ways in which, and it's not a place, it's an idea, the idea is that somehow you can control people from this behavior. So I'd like to hear our poet's comment on that thought a little bit, that this behavior is intended to protect totalitarianism. It's intended to limit human expression. Yeah.
Well, poets have vision. They have vision for the future, and they want what's best, and dictators hate that. So you have to protect it.
In the case of the Burmese military regime, it's always a case where they wanted to present to the world a certain facade that everything is going hunky-dory and there is justice under this, whatever they call government. And poets are the one that exposes the lies about these, and they tell the truth in a way that makes it almost irresistible, so people cannot help but listen to it. And that's a threat if you're a military regime that wants to present a false facade, a gold-coated kind of view of the world that you want to show to the world.
Well, if you think military regime is doing that, look at Iran. It is a religious, fanatic regime, which is really worse than military, probably. They just control people, everything they do, the way they look, the way they eat, the way they behave, the way they talk, the way they write, everything controlled. They want to control everything and say, our laws come from Quran, which is nonsense. I mean, Quran is not the best open-minded, progressive book on earth anyways. This is religious, not useful for human life, especially in 21st century. But they have control of everything. And they do that because they have control of resources, money, and power. And anyone in power, they become dictators. And dictators cannot tolerate the truth. That's the end of it.
Yeah, it's worth remembering. Thanks for reminding me of that, by the way. You talked about how Iran, in the case of Iran, is actually the use of religion. It's worth remembering that the Burmese military regime called itself the socialist government. So it really doesn't matter what it calls itself. It usually uses a particular terminology, whether it's a political terminology like socialism, or kind of like a religious kidnapping the idea of religion so that they could use it to control people. Ultimately, we are talking about dictators, authoritarian governments. So we should separate them from the name that they use to call themselves, or the excuses that they use, like the Quran, for justifying what they do.
It is so funny if I tell you a story that happened recently. It is Ramadan. I don't know if you guys know what is Ramadan. People fast. It is Ramadan in the Muslim world. I mean, not just in Iran. And Iranian government, one of the important person came, said, we don't want to see anyone eating anything during the day because it's a holy month of Ramadan. Oh, and listen to this, what they did. There is a special bread in Iran that Iranian people like to eat with their breakfast. They ordered that all the bakeries that make that bread, they need to stop it for a month. So nobody can eat breakfast and because of that bread. And they really think they can control people, but they can't. They just see what they like to see, but people are different at home and in their brain. That's the sad thing for them.
Yep.
You just got me thinking about Eduardo Galeano wrote a book, and there's a wonderful vignette in it. It's part of the Memory of Fire, and I don't remember which volume it was, but he talks about somebody he knew who was a political prisoner, and his daughter drew him a picture, and it was forbidden to show birds, in pictures. You couldn't bring images of birds into the prison. And so she drew these circles, and he asked her, what are these? And she said, shh, those are the eyes of the birds. I've smuggled them in. And what you were saying about how things are then end up in code. So we come up with a code and the code evolves, and it's this game of code now where we talk about the things that are important to us when under certain kinds of pressures in a way that only the people who know the code will get. And I think about my own community and how I envy the younger people who grew up with our religions not illegal, because I see them and their freedom to express it, you know, and I want that for everybody. So there are a lot of people right now in the United States whose existence is being made and has been made consistently untenable. And one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of people about in a couple of projects that I'm working on, so we need to witness for one another at every possible moment. We need to witness for one another at every possible moment. When Asian women and men are getting attacked in the streets, we need to witness that and stand up. When African American people are getting shot at police stops, we need to witness for them. Native American women are disappearing and murdered on the regular. We need to witness for them. I think Tongo is at the library, John. Which is now the second time that that's happened. Maybe I'm not a good communicator. Anyway, ongoing. It is required as a human being in this time to pay attention to these things that are being done to people, even when they're not being done to us. And even when we are having extreme things done to us, we need to witness for one another, because the greatest fear, I think, of tyranny is that we will pay attention to each other.
That's right.
And the greatest power of poetry is its capacity to unify. Somebody else say some things. I've got to talk to Tongo for a second.
Well, if you have extra minute, I can read a poem of mine. Okay, this is my new collection called Ask the Wind, just published less than a month ago. And I have a poem here called Rise. Rise to the sense of your rights, to the injustice you witness. It is not the slavery era with the mantra, a still tongue makes a wise head. Sitting quietly is the reason we lost the path, reason for still waters, and road ending in dead ends, reason for having tyrants, lunatics, criminals as a leader. Behind this short wall, underneath this old blanket, on this torn carpet, hands of many heroes grow strong. Do we remember the hands of Frederick Douglass and Fidel? Have we read poem of Phyllis Wheatley, kidnapped from West Africa and enslaved? Maybe the time has come for lions to write history. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Is that the rewriting of history, to whom does the history belong? To whom does the language belong?
And who writes the history?
And who writes the history?
Yeah.
The reality is that the history has always been written by everyone, or always been told by everyone. And all you do when you try to outlaw a specific type of person is you teach them that they're outside the law. You inspire a different level of resistance. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
No.
Uh, my grandma ran moonshine during the Prohibition in Oklahoma.
Mm.
Now, DL's laughing because everybody's grandma ran moonshine during Prohibition in Oklahoma.
Mm.
Not just mine. You know, and you sort of think about, you know, she was the kind of woman who did the laundry and cooked biscuits and fried crappie and and catfish and made bathtub gin. You know, you get a whole different level of resistance, and you teach people to be resistant. And it doesn't go well ultimately, does it? You know, I'm trying to line it up to where I'm going to say something brilliant about the United States prison system, and then Tonga's going to come on and read a great poem. This is what it is in my head. So everybody bear with me while I try to be brilliant about this. When you make certain people's lives completely impossible throughout history, they take a step sideways into a whole different perspective. And again, it doesn't go well forever. You can maintain it maybe a couple generations, but it doesn't really work. And then you have to either ratchet it up or give up on the project. But the kind of pressure that gets put on people cannot be maintained forever.
No.
It just can't. We're seeing some cracks in it in different places all over the planet right now, and ultimately this latest round of new laws across the country that limit people's access to their own humanity are going to backfire. Kenneth, do you have one more poem for us as we try to work out the logistics of this little moment?
I'd be happy to. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Earlier when I wrote a poem by Min Ko Naing, a former student leader and a political prisoner. So happened that Min Ko Naing also wrote a poem in tribute to another friend of his who died, also a former political prisoner. Under military regime, when this young dissident, his name is Daya Minwei, when he died, not a lot of people would want to show up at the funeral, because once you show up there, that marks you as a pro-democracy person and a supporter of the resistance. So suddenly you'll have military intelligence officers in plain clothes tagging along with you. So you could imagine the funeral was a sparsely attended kind of affair. It was at that funeral that Min Ko Naing, the former political prisoner himself, read this poem as a tribute to his comrade who died. And this is called The Groom of Fallen Stars. The Groom of Fallen Stars. My friend, you nurtured your conviction like your own child. My friend, you burn your injuries like lamp oil. My friend, you lick your own wounds and resurrect. My friend, you had to drape your own skin, sharpen your own bone into a needle, sew your own outfit, and look marvelous in it. Go ahead, my friend. We must stay behind to heal the best we could the injuries of this world, where the stars are still falling one by one. Go ahead, my friend. We must still stay behind to shield the earth's wounds from the many scorching suns with our own bare hands. Go ahead, my friend. we must stay behind to write your poetry's table of content on the world's vinyl record of grief. Go ahead, my friend. On the day the peacock banners of freedom fly once more along the campus wall, we shall meet again. And that was his poem. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, and at this point, can we welcome Tongo Eisen-Martin?
Here we go.
Hey,
Hey, Tango.
hey, everybody. Good to see you all. Apologies for the theatrics. I'm at the library. Okay. This is actually sort of more ideal because I was having a printing problem. These are poems. These are poems by Christopher Malik, who is doing life in prison in Florida. Where I'm from. I'm from Double Negatives, a child's playground holding hands with a graveyard, grenade juices and pickled eggs, a jack of spades repping the city from a billboard hand sign thrown up from a place where rock and hip hop agree, hit the same house parties. I'm from where alleys have more life than the streets. The chalk police outline my body with tomorrow is the one my 5th grade teacher used yesterday. I'm from where the life expectancy is 5 more years, where juries are instructed, the easy J begs for better days, 2 Newports turned up in the pack and your pets find you, quarter smashing knuckle games in cafeterias, spoon fights, 24-hour laundry mat meditations, old newspaper machines turned into benches under a tree, beached Heineken bottles, whistled past festivities into the breeze where all innocence sways. This poem is called Missed Takes. All things considered, drugs are people too. Mama ain't raised no quitter. I tried once, but I quit quitting. She'd be proud. Bliss haunts you. A minute ago, I thought I was tripping. As if in the chamber, any sense spent, seeds burned. Hope some parts of me adheres to parisence, trying to catch light and impulse to ride wasn't always a scar. Poems are my only friends, even though they hurt, they sting, they murder. Third personing who I used to be. Life is a movie in society's basement. Escapism. Really strange, I'd willingly traipse around here, this neural virtual actuality, no sense of what's surrounding me, which is bad because in essence, ghosts, skeletons, and persuasive demons keeping me nascent, I struggle through the crowd to find a place without sounds and distractions, to a place solitary and empty on average. 5 minutes is an eternity here. I find myself debating, is it real? Apotheosis. Last time leaving gates like those, I exhaled deeply. The threshold to prescribed civilization. I stopped, held, and crossed, inhaling my own mysticism stuck in a mess. Freedom in C major, in hopes. My lungs didn't resonate the tone of razor wire. Out 2 calendars, I'm recounting to a friend, after all of this, I don't know if heaven really does have a gate. That might not necessarily be the place for me. Let's just imagine. Bruises. Dessert should never come first. We miss some things or never let them out. Like how I never told you I've always hated needles. At the age of 28, I still look away. Prodded by something sharper than a parent's wit, I find myself slightly bruised, which confounds me speed bump veins, emotional times you left, or are they the times I left? Criminal paces without collecting 2 billfolds twice. No, wait, 3 times in a row is ultimately a fault of my own, is it not? A measure of your indifference inside. As I sat, an envelope would fall through a flap with your name written on the back, written whispers, missives, and the chances of you taking me back every time I make it back. And those few times you appear on the other side of the glass, left hand prints behind. Hope is the lazy man's drug and the guilty man's religion. I should have OD'd on the church steps, like the mother who left, oh Lord. Apologies, y'all. In the way the document, man, this is a really good stanza too. But unfortunately, the way the document reads on this is not gonna work, so I'm not gonna be able to put it together. So I'm through of turning into obsidian in your eyes and falling from the dark cloud in the sky above you. I stopped waiting for your letters too. Instead, I call every denial from the court a love letter. And I know you'd ask why. Marriage is an institution after all, in a circular cell. And so still I sit with a sentence longer than the sun is projected to exist. I'm struggling to find a space between pure existence and cold, hard dying. We left each other back there. I have not escaped our love. I didn't want hope's help. A needle, its bruise. Confessions. I found myself seated among people I didn't recognize anymore. I attempted to swallow my head, hoping it'd get lodged in my chest. They're distracting. And on most days, maybe that's why you left. Apologies foregone, and truth be written, I can be clumsy. Sorry. There should have been more coffee. The sails are carried by the breath. They weren't strong enough to take us to the shores of your fantasies. I remember when we got lost in our conversations, we talked everything. We talked Neptune and Jupiter because we'd already talked about everything on Earth, and we're not designer. Every dime that flipped into my life landed face down on mute. Well, we all are still waiting. Half a red cent. Lately seems like I can't write anymore because words should be restricted. No one ever told us submarines were just planes without wings, so we failed to take notice of our souls. We jumped in a line, running off the skin, finished the ride. It paid pennies. The judge gets paid $131,000 a year to stop crime that's happened. The whips and the peace pipes are buried in the same place. The irredeemable past of a convict. I feel the price of guilt. When I was 8, I remember this wrestling stage toy and went with the ring, that went with the fingers, that went with the accessories. I just had to have it. I went in my mom's room on her only day off. There are certain debts you just can't pay back. From the first to the last illegal act I ever committed since waving white price tag flags, I snuck at least 100 debts into her wallet. Yet still, she's homeless today, and so am I. Missing in society's overpriced life sentence, it's a half a red cent buried in the ground. And in that balance, my change hangs. Why I write? In a billion codes, one. A word travels down my arm, companions follow. These hungry freedom fighters rant, rave, and rage, looking for critique and inspirations one day and of lately, a place to witness the noise. Which is it? This is life. Hiding behind the alphabet of conjecture, expanding into chaos with an index commenting straight for inexistence, kicked by God doing God's job. This is death. Crawling careless through conscious, eating into the side of calendar boxes, unforgiven under the macroscopic lens of parasite feeding off the nature of rebellion. This is life. sleeping under the covers of purgatory, tucked in tight with fresh cement, never waking any closer to an end, but reprieve escaping the lie of dreams. This is death. Wearing a 4-letter oxymoronic prank juking poster-sized picket sign displays, absconding headlines in political disguise, evenly executioner has a hood to lower. This is life. By name, this is death. In truth, this is death. Ensued, this life without a soul. Summer absence. Expected apologies for the rush, prison fences, watering on the daycares, playground, buses don't arrive till school lunches get good. Riot previews tied together with slides with swing sets for two-facing sunsets meant for none. Summer took a winter vacation when my ride came. We got on it together, sat on separate wheel wells to feel closer to the streets. I miss the ideal now, and in the clip full of miles, Summer will too. There were crosshairs in the murmurs to myself, molehills across my film, pride tucked under resolve, and a bumper sticker slapped to the back of every thought. Said, no one screams foul at the hollows whistle. It only takes a thumbful of wisdom to hear the responsible songs played out, inside out, then verse. Some welcome mats are better left unseen. Most sunsets aren't. Lowered on the failing end of a seesaw, creaking tragedy, seeing taillights, stealing warmth. I remember 10 triumphs in every one, as if a DJ can scratch that many into a scene and bang it too hard to hear any good knock. See, it's really the harmonica that sings, no voice needed. Play along to a melody from swing sets, change quietly, perspective to the rhythm of home, then hook. Wonder when the sprinklers will stop. These things grew tall enough, and the only rust heard is wind swinging all alone, huddling off in mausoleums. This kind of tragic is 3-round bursts from 1,000 county drum memorialized by absence, then bridge. Missing, man. Missing lonely sunrises meant for me. Thank you. Again, that's the poetry of Christopher Malik, a young man doing life in Florida.
And is that book out yet, or are you working on that book?
On the way.
On the way.
Yeah.
That's something to look forward to. That was remarkable. Thank you so much. And you
Right
don't
on.
need to.
My bad. His upcoming book is called Pendulum Under a Dead Clock.
And that's Black Friday Press.
That's Black Friday, yeah.
You don't ever need to apologize for Drama Hun. It's worth waiting for you to hear you read. Thank you so much for
Right
that.
on. All right, much love.
We have some applause for all of our readers. D.L. Lang, Kenneth Wong, Manaz Badihian, Tongo Eisenmartin. Thank you so much, library, for the work that you do making this possible. I'm Kim Shuck, and I really appreciate our audience as well. And it is always
John stepped away, but on behalf of the library,
That's right.
I'm gonna say,
Come back next month.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you, John and Kim.
Mm.
Thank you.
So next month at the
Everybody.
Poem Jam, we're going to be hearing from the new Jambu Press anthology in honor of Lawrence Ferlinghetti. So I actually don't know who's reading yet, but I'm pretty sure Bobby's going to be here. So Bobby Cohen will be reading, and other people from the anthology. Thank you for showing up. Thank you all for your beautiful words, and thank you for your incredible patience, the delightful audience, both in the Zoom room and online.
Take care. Good night, all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.